What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with the bass player from Spinal Tap. Judd, we can't do this seriously, can we? Can we actually even do this video right now?
We're going to have to.
Vikings.
We're going to have to.
Movember. There's a lot of Movember left.
Oh, this is, I know. 1500ESPN.com. Please donate to my cause. Please, somebody.
Vikings beat the Lions 34-24, Judd. And what did we see? They got back to playing, I think, a very opportunistic style of football, which is precisely what they have to be able to do. How often do we see it? They've got to be able to win the turnover battle. On this day, sometimes it is some of those bounces that go your way. Christian Ballard coughs one up on a kick return that he should have just called a fair catch on. The Vikings managed to recover that. The two times the Lions put the ball on the ground, or two of the three, the Vikings are able to recover. That's a big difference in this game, but also Adrian Peterson continues to perform at a very high level. Christian Ponder got himself going, particularly in the intermediate passing game today. I really think, and I asked him about this after the game, that post that they hit to Jarius Wright in the early going got him to loosen up a little bit. Because everything that I was hearing behind the scenes was he just looks tight. He's not letting it fly.
Right.
He let it fly on that one. I think that had a positive impact going forward.
54-yard pass, fifth play from scrimmage by the Vikings of the game. Jarius Wright comes in, and people wanted Jarius Wright, and we said, hold on a second, what can this kid really do? Well, he catches that big pass. They had practiced that pass on Friday. Jarius Wright actually dropped it. Today, Ponder underthrew it, but it still worked out. And you know what that did too, Tom? Is it not only loosened Ponder up, but it also allowed the crowd to get into the game and not turn against Ponder. I really thought Ponder had to get off to at least an acceptable start. Now, a 54-yard pass is great. It's very good. But the one thing is, I was very curious if Ponder didn't get off to a good start, if the offense struggled at first, and it did struggle at times, and you heard some boos here and there, but if they'd gotten off to a bad start, then the environment would have turned really sour. Then Ponder would have got booed. That didn't happen. That was key. Calvin Johnson, huge game for the Lions, but I'll say this too, Tom. It always helps to play Detroit. There are certain teams that if you can play them, it really helps, because I'll never be able to figure out their offensive scheme. I really can't.
They want to run those shotgun draws over and over, and they have had some success in recent weeks with it, but the Vikings, once again, by and large, were able to stop that with a seven-man front. They did bring down a safety a little bit more than they did in the first meeting, but they took that away. Calvin Johnson is a beast. The Vikings were going to sit back and cover two all day, so what did they do? They ran guys to the post. But back to Ponder for a second, it was very clear. They wanted to try to change up the rhythm of what they were doing offensively because they thought that some teams had figured that out. First play of the game, rather, they line up with base personnel, but they spread five guys wide. They throw a quick hit out there, which I think was Ponder's third read, out to Jerome Felton. Just get the ball in somebody's hands and get something going. And then, you have a play where you think you're going to get a favorable matchup. We've talked about it many times with Jarius Wright, and one of the things is the drops. When people wondered why hasn't he been able to get out there, we saw it in training camp. It's clearly still happening in practice. He had one in the game here today. But you see the difference in speed. That's why I thought Jarius Wright was going to get on the field in Seattle, was just to put another element of speed on the field. You look at him versus a Michael Jenkins, and it's night and day.
And the key here, too, is Jarius Wright can, and Percy could do this, too, if they wanted. They can stretch the field. I mean, we think of them as slot receivers because they're little guys, but they have the potential to stretch the field. That's what Jarius Wright did early. The other thing that I think that we need to get to today, you brought up briefly, is the play calling and Bill Musgrave and the adjustments made this past week, because it's so easy to micro-focus everything on Ponder and to blame Ponder for all the problems and to say, why isn't Ponder throwing into the end zone on such and such a play, which happened today? Well, that's not all based, one, it's based on what Ponder's seeing, but it's also based on the plays that are called by Musgrave. And so I think we get so hung up on everything's Christian Ponder. Well, yeah, you know what? When his confidence seems to wane, that's a bad thing. But if we get so focused on everything has to do with Ponder, that's simply not the case. A lot of this has to do with game planning, play calling. They got Kyle Rudolph involved today, and you know what they did? They threw to Kyle Rudolph sometimes when he wasn't wide open. But that's the reality of it. Kyle Rudolph said last week, throw me the ball, I'll either catch it or I'll break the play up.
He had a ball or two go through his hands today, too.
Right, but what I'm saying
he made
is
a conscious effort to
what
put
I'm
it in
saying
his
is you
hands.
don't eliminate him from the offense because you're not comfortable with something. And this is the National Football League. Defenses can cover guys. You still have to go to them at times. You've got to take some risks. It's not dumb risks, but you've got to take some chances, and that's what Musgrave needed to realize, and they did a better job today.
It did seem as though you saw more crossing routes today than you've seen. I'd have to go back and look at it play by play, but it seemed like you had more of those sorts of routes where a guy is going to flash out of his break a lot sooner and come long across the field, where Ponder is good at, now it's sometimes to his detriment, but he is good at moving laterally to extend plays, getting outside the pocket.
It's a strength.
But he kept his shoulders square down the field. You, in theory, want him stepping up in the pocket when he can.
Yep.
But he was not stepping out of the pocket before pressure arrived. He was using his feet, correctly today to get outside the pocket. When you've got more crossing routes, there are guys who are going to be able to flash a little bit more quickly, whereas in past weeks, I think they were running hitches across the field, and those guys were stopping at the top of the routes, not moving.
Can I bring up a point, too? Adrian Peterson broached this in the locker room on Friday, so you guys had to write it. There's no question about it. But this offense, please, this offense is not better without Percy Harvin. Can they get more creative? Absolutely. We saw the game in Houston. What we saw was the potential for, if you have Jarius Wright and Percy Harvin on the field at the same time, the potential for one of them to stretch the field. That's a fantastic thing. But Christian Ponder, Bill Musgrave, there's nobody better served by having Percy Harvin not playing because Ponder might have to think outside the box more. No, Percy Harvin's one of the best players in the National Football League. Let's not talk about the fact this offense is better without Percy Harvin. That's a fallacy. It's just not true.
No, you just need to continue to figure out how to use your weapons. They had
and that's everybody, though.
9 different guys caught the football today, 10 if you include Christian Ponder, and that ball that got batted back to him for a 15-yard loss. But yeah, they spread the football around. Ponder, I thought, was on point in terms of his accuracy. All of a sudden, we're not talking about accuracy with Christian Ponder. There were a couple balls that sailed out of bounds, but I'm pretty sure those were throwaways. Did you see a low percentage fade down the sideline? No. I didn't see a whole lot happening outside the hashes. They wanted to attack in the middle of the field, have guys crossing, and they were able to have some success with that. I really do think
3 drops too.
And 3 drops, even though he completed 75% of his passes, roughly 24 out of 32.
Yep.
So yeah, a high percentage of his passes were complete. I do think getting that ball to Jarius Wright, which he put on the money, it's a pretty good throw, and it's not a throw that's exactly easy to make. You put the air under the ball. The idea that Ponder doesn't have the arm strength to get the ball down the field is just incorrect.
No.
But you get a favorable matchup there where the Mike linebacker's trying to trail underneath that play. You're going to be able to hit that to Jarius Wright.
And the linebacker, Wright said the linebacker was theoretically supposed to run with him and didn't. And Ponder did a good job, too, on that play. Go back and watch it. He does a real nice job of stepping up as well.
Mm-hmm.
He steps up. He gets, now the ball it wasn't in stride. So I guess you could say the ball wasn't perfectly thrown. But in that situation, once again, it's good enough. And Wright made a nice catch.
Let's also get to the defense here. Chad Greenway comes up with his first interception in about 3
liked your
years.
mustache, too.
He stopped an answer in order to point out how bad my mustache is.
January 2010, last regular season game of the 2009 season.
So almost 3 years ago, it's been since Greenway, and he's had a lot of balls bounce off his hands. He makes a nice play in man coverage. The ball's tipped, but that's not an easy catch for him to make. Jamarcus Sanford, late in the game, granted they're just trying to put away the game at that point, but that's still with a big play offense like the Lions have, being able to make that play at that point, stick your helmet on the ball, knock it out. That's a big play. Jamarcus Sanford, that's one thing that he really does well. They were able to create some turnovers today. They did stop the ball, did stop the run against the Lions, though that's not entirely a surprise because they've always been able to stop the Lions' run game.
Right.
I thought the biggest thing was they were flying to the football. You saw a lot of energy. You saw a lot of hustle. I know that some guys took a little bit of offense to Alan Williams calling them out publicly for loafing last week.
Yep.
What you saw today was guys rallying to the ball. And their defense, the way that it's built, you've got to be able to spill those runs to the edges and have guys like cornerbacks able to clean up. They did a really good job of that today. They also tackled well down the field. They didn't have that 10-yard pass that turns into a 40-yard gain because somebody misses. Even Harrison Smith wrapped up a couple of times. That's a positive sign. They brought the correct mentality to this game today.
Greenway, I think, set the tone early. Greenway was flying to start this game. He was absolutely
the whole
flying
game,
around, and I think he was mad. I think he was mad about guys being called out. The other thing is I'll be curious to see when you grade the film on Monday how Fred Evans at nose tackle, who started and played a lot, played.
Eyeball test, I thought he played well.
With Guyon out, because he might be, ultimately, you know what, when they come back from the bye, he might be their starting nose tackle.
I think he should be.
Interesting that Jamarcus Sanford and Mr. Raymond rotated series somewhat. There was some rhyme or reason, but Mr. Raymond playing for the first time since week 3. And the other note on defense is in the nickel defense for the first time this season, instead of having Aaron Henderson and or Jasper Brinkley exclusively on the field in nickel with Greenway, they rotated Henderson and Brinkley, which I think is
mostly Henderson.
But I don't think that's a bad idea. I think if you rotate them a little bit and get them reps, I do not think that's a bad idea.
I would put Aaron Henderson out there every time, based on what I've seen from Jasper Brinkley.
But I'm saying that dual rotation isn't the worst thing.
Right, but I would still go with Aaron Henderson.
Jamarcus Sanford, I talked to after the game, and I said, what's going on with you and these strips, forced fumbles? I mean, you've been great. And he said, I would love to be like Charles Tillman. I would love to know what Charles Tillman does. He said, I have no idea. Because what Charles Tillman does is he rakes the ball, and Charles Tillman never really puts himself in jeopardy of getting a concussion. He said, all I can do is go in there and hit guys. And that's what I do. And he's done a good job.
He's Judd. I'm Tom. Full Vikings coverage at 1500ESPN.com as we head into the bye.
Donate.
And yes, these are going to be a lot worse in 2 weeks. We'll see you.